somebody fully grown. So when you get adopted into the family of God, you ain't got to wait for the inheritance. You walk into the inheritance. Why? Because the one who is the subject of the testament has already died to execute the testament. That's why Jesus had to die, folks. He had to die so that the will could be executed, so that we can be heirs now. That's why you ain't got to wait to glory to be blessed. You can be blessed right here and now. Your inheritance. Oh, no. Mercy. Now being redeemed, you can be like the prodigal son, but righteous, not unrighteous. That is, you can go to your father and ask for your portion, because Jesus has already died to give you access to the portion. Y'all walking around here spiritually poor and not knowing you can be spiritually rich because you are included in the will. Don't show up for the reading of the will and think you're going to get a small pigeon. That's not what the text says. If you show up for the reading of the will, you're heir and joint heir with Jesus Christ. You're the head and not the tail. You go from being a borrower to a lender because that's what's in the will. Get my stuff together. I told you I'm the GOAT. I'm the GOAT tonight. GOAT. You understand why hermeneutics is so important. We got to get the rules right. When we get the rules right, then it all knits together and we have a firm understanding of how it all flows together. So hermeneutics is art and science of biblical interpretation. Two parts of hermeneutics that's important: exegete and eisegete. Exegete is pulling out of the text what it actually means. Eisegete is putting in what you want it to mean. Right? Okay. So many people eisegete the Bible. That is, they put into the text what it doesn't say. They're taking prophecies and making them say something that they weren't meant to be said. They're taking promises and misappropriating the promises. They're taking and they're cherry picking and chopping up passages of scripture. One of the rules of hermeneutics is to make sure that you interpret in the space of context. Some context and culture sometimes come into play when you're trying to get an understanding of what a text means. Culture does matter. Context does matter. That's why it's important that whenever you read the Bible, don't just live off one verse. Live off the verses surrounding the one verse. Every verse should have some friends. Every verse should have company. You never form a doctrine around one verse. Hello, somebody. You know how many churches started off because they got one verse? That's why they jackleg now. Every verse should have some friends. Every verse should have company. So if you got one verse on grace, find 5 others about grace. You get one verse about mercy, find 5 others about mercy. You find one verse about God's love. Everybody know John 3:16. Give me another verse that got God loving. See my point? You should have more than one, because there's more than John 3:16 about God's love. There's more than it. In fact, I challenge you to find me a verse about God's love in the Old Testament, because some people believe that God didn't show love in the Old Testament, but he did. He did show love in the Old Testament. All right, so y'all understand about hermeneutics. We all understand about hermeneutics? Hermeneutics is what? The art and science of biblical interpretation. 2 parts that I want you to take away from hermeneutics is exegete, which is to take out what it actually means. Eisegete is put something in that it don't mean. So don't make it say what you want it to say. Submit to it saying what it says. And when you don't know, ask somebody. Okay? All right. So I'm gonna show it to you out of Isaiah chapter 28. So now let me say something about Isaiah 28. They set this up because I'm gonna look at a couple of verses in Isaiah 27. But I want to show you about the issue of Isaiah 28 and why it's and why hermeneutics is so important. So let me just talk about this. So let me give you first a background of Isaiah chapter 28, and I think that you want to kind of capture this. So I'm going to give you a little background about Isaiah 28. Now, the book of Isaiah is broken out into 2 parts. That's the reason why some people often ascribe Isaiah to be comparable to the entire Bible, because Isaiah is sort of broken down like the whole Bible. So Isaiah is almost like a microcosm or it's like microscopic view of the entire Bible. So if there's 2 testaments in the entire Bible, there's 2 sections in the book of Isaiah. And as the Bible has its divisions, like the law and the prophets and the poetry and the gospels and the books of the epistles and such, Isaiah could be broken out in some of its same parts. But for the sake of teaching tonight, I just want to tell you that there's 2 parts that I want you to focus on. The first 39 chapters of Isaiah. Now, let's just tell you this. The first 39 chapters of Isaiah are filled with judgment. First 39 chapters. And you're going to appreciate the prophetic utterance that's going to be spoken over this house when I get to the end of this. Okay? So, the first part of Isaiah is filled with judgment. And there's 2 things in the first 39 chapters of Isaiah that God's judged. 2 things. 2 things. Now, this is important because these 2 things that God judged in Isaiah is 2 things that God is constantly judging in the earth. 2 things. The one thing that he judged was idolatry. Yeah. The one thing that God does not tolerate is idolatry. Okay? Y'all get it? He does not tolerate idolatry. It's one of the commandments. It's one of their commandments. You can't have any graven image. The reason why he doesn't permit idolatry is because idolatry is a form of substituting God. And God will never he'll never tolerate being a substitute. That's why so that's the issue you have with idolatry. He doesn't have an issue with people being creative and crafty. He has an issue with people being creative and crafty with creating that which is a substitute for him. That's right. They first, and now why is that important that he needs to talk to them about idolatry? And the issue of idolatry doesn't come up pre-Exodus. You see where I'm going? It didn't come up pre-Exodus. You know why? Because when you zero in, say, on Adam and go down through the genealogies and you get to Noah and all this kind of stuff like that, idolatry wasn't a problem. You know when idolatry became a problem? When they were in Egypt. Yeah. The message about idolatry doesn't come out until Egypt. You understand? You know the reason why God has to talk to you about idolatry? Because the world he brought you out of was saturated with idolatry. Come on. That's when he raised the issue about idolatry. Genesis has nothing about idolatry. It says nothing about idolatry. When does idolatry become a law? In Exodus. And when does it actually happen? Exodus 20. When he says, look, I can't have y'all having no idolatry. And you know the reason why? You know why he could say, I can't have you having no idolatry? Because I just destroyed 10 for you in your presence. Wow. The 10 plagues was God destroying 10 idolatry. Idolatrous, yeah, that right there. 10 idols. Stop it, Sharice. 10 idols. He destroyed 10 idols. So they come out of Egypt, and he says, you shouldn't have no other idols. And they now know why. Because what idol stood toe-to-toe with me for your deliverance? There was not one idol that was able to take me down to prevent you from being delivered. Because think about it. What does the enemy want? He wants to keep you enslaved. What does God want? He wants you to be free. So there was no God in Egypt that favored Israel's freedom. So surely some God would have shown up for the fight to keep them enslaved. And God is so bad. He's so bad that he brought their deliverance not by the hand of an army, but through a staff. Y'all hear what I'm saying? Can I bless somebody here tonight? That God is about to deliver you, not with an army, but with just a staff. For some of you, for some of you, it's just going to be a pen. But they just write debt paid in full. Moses did not rally the house of his father-in-law and took them into Egypt and say, we're going to fight battle to battle. Nope. And he didn't go into Goshen and say, get me the strong young men because we're going to go toe-to-toe with Pharaoh's army. Nope. Pharaoh just had a staff so that the scriptures would be true, that God would use the weak things of the world to take down the strong. Wow. Y'all see all this biblical implication? That's why you can't afford to get this stuff wrong. Wow. So if you get the right lens, you'll see it clearly from one end of the book to the other. So that's why he just used a staff. Moses used nothing but a staff to deliver them. That's why you can praise God on the way home when you think back over your past and how God delivered you with nothing but just a staff. Wow. There was no army that came to rescue you. You didn't have a team that you could call on the phone to come rescue you. It was just something that was insignificant that you thought there was no way it could be pulled off, and God used it to bring deliverance to your life. So that's why God said, why you idolizing them when I was the one who brought you out? So the first thing that he judges is idolatry. The second thing that he judges, the second is immorality. So the two things that God judged in the first part of Isaiah is idolatry and immorality. So those are two things. And those, let me tell you this, those are the two things that God will continue to judge throughout history. It's immorality and idolatry. Immorality and idolatry. Immorality and idolatry. And oh, by the way, he comes for the household of faith. Judgment for idolatry, listen, he does not judge nations for idolatry. He judges his people for idolatry. Wow. Remember that. He does not judge nations. God doesn't zero his judgment towards a nation that does not serve him.
Come on, sir.
Y'all understand? He does not levy his judgment for idolatry to a nation that does not serve him. It is reserved for those who, watch this, if he didn't rescue them, then they're not subject to the judgment of idolatry. Only if you've been rescued or you are accountable not to have an idol. That's the reason why some of them died waiting for Moses to come back down off the mountain. Because they, watch this, they engaged in what? In idolatry. And how do we know they engaged in idolatry? Because the text says that they coerced Aaron, Moses' brother, to make what? An idol. What kind of idol? A golden calf. Where would they have seen golden idols? Thank you, Niles. You see how his voice was in Egypt. He let y'all know. He know. That's exactly it, sir. Think about it. Think of the influence in all those years they spent in Egypt. When they came out, they couldn't handle the immaterial of God. So they wanted to put him in the material. And they decided to come up with something that they saw in Egypt. And oh, by the way, they would have known how to do it because they were used to build the idols of the Egyptians. Wow. Come on, sir. So be careful, because some of y'all know how to build the articles of the enemy. Wow. And then try to legitimize it. That's called.
Come on. Come on.
Oh.
Tell the truth.
That's some of y'all are building things that your hands used to build when you were in the world, and you trying to sanctify it.
Wow, sir.
Oh.
Wow.
Come on.
You think about it. They didn't need instructions for, watch this, listen y'all, it comes together, hermeneutics. They didn't need instructions for building a golden calf, but somehow they needed instructions for how to build a tabernacle.
Sir? Come on.
See, whenever God asks you to build something, you don't know how to do it until he gives you instructions. So if God asks you to do something and you racing to build it, you're using the works of flesh. Because God will never ask you to build something that you know how to build.
Oh my God, sir.
So the reason why they didn't need instructions on a calf is because they knew how to build it. Because they spent 400 years helping the Egyptians build their temples. That's why it was made of gold, and it was a calf. What do you see in Egypt? But gods made with animals' heads and animals' bodies. You had a god who had a dog head and a human body. You had them worshiping cats. So yeah, they knew about building. And notice that's disrespect to God.
Yes.
That you would build an image of an animal to represent him.
Wow. Wow.
How many of you have built that representation of God that's not like God? That's why he doesn't like idolatry. Because since you ain't never seen him, anything you try to build will come up short because it'll never look like him. Because you don't know what he looks like. That's like somebody trying to draw your picture who ain't never seen it. Hello. You call somebody, Pastor Will, and say, can you draw my picture? Well, I ain't never seen you. Take your best shot. I remember Renee, an episode, they've been doing the reruns of Good Times, right? So I've been watching an old episode of Good Times, and the gangster. You read the episode of the gangster coming there? I can't remember his name, but he had commissioned JJ to paint a picture of his girlfriend. Yeah, right? To paint a picture of his girlfriend. Now, he ain't never seen, he had just a little photo, but he had never seen her in person. So he painted a picture, and when she came to see the picture, she was mad. She said, who is that? JJ said, that's you. She said, that don't look nothing like me right there. He said, well, I painted how I saw it.
Wow.
And God says, because you haven't seen me, you're starting to make idols. Watch this, to look like what you want to see about me.
Wow.
What you see about me. So, two things that he judges the people on: idolatry and immorality. That's first. Now watch this. So the first 39 chapters is judgment. The final 27 chapters is hope. So this is a good word of revelation. Hope comes always after the judgment. So the first 39 chapters is judgment. The final 27 chapters is the message of hope and consolation, is comfort. And you add that together, what we have, 66 chapters. How many books of the Bible we have? 66. 66 books, we have 66 chapters in Isaiah. Now during the time of Isaiah, the nation of Assyria was growing in power. And literally they were gobbling up, Assyria was gobbling up a lot of nations, a lot of the nations around the Mediterranean and such. The Assyrians came in and gobbled up the northern kingdoms. Now remember the kingdom, remember what makes up the kingdom. The 12 sons of Jacob made up the Israel nation. The 12 sons. So Jacob had 12 sons between several women and wives. Those 12 sons made up the nation of Israel. They were tribes. There were 12 tribes. By the way, the number 12 is the number of government. So that's why he didn't have 10 sons. Because 10 sons is not the number for government, 12. So he had to have 12 in order for God to have a government. So that's the reason why when Israel came out of Egypt, they could be a nation overnight. Because they had 12 nations to form a government. You see? You understand? So it was 12 nations. So they were unified under David. They were unified under Solomon. But because of Solomon and the alliances that he had formed with other nations, when Solomon died, the nations split. 12 tribes split. Let's take it back to the blood. 12 brothers split. Because there are 12 tribes. There were 12 brothers. So the brothers split 10 to 2. 10 formed the north and 2 formed the south. Got me? The north never had a good king. 10 nations, which by the way, this is a good lesson for you, which means the majority is not always right. Did y'all hear that? They had the majority, but every king that reigned over them was wicked. Every king. Well, you are familiar with the northern kingdom because the northern kingdom gave birth to Ahab. You're familiar with the southern kingdom, the two nations, because they gave birth to Jehoshaphat. Right? So you had Jehoshaphat, who's in the southern kingdom, and then you had, and oh, by the way, David was born out of one of the nations in the south. Which, oh, by the way, Jesus comes out of one of the nations in the south. So how about that God can birth you out of the small and minuscule, and you turn around and become great and mighty? Lord have mercy. Look at somebody and say, I still got some growing to do. Yes, you do. It's powerful. It's powerful. You're still growing. The southern kingdoms, their kings went like this. They'd have a good king and a negative king, a good king and an evil king, and so this is how the south went. But the north, they always was negative. They were rotten. You know what they said about Ahab? Ahab was worse than his father and grandfather put together. Wow. That's how nasty Ahab was. And to think him that Jehoshaphat tried to form an alliance with somebody who was worse than his father and grandfather put together. That's why sometimes you got to pray and ask God to give you discernment with who you connect with, because you don't know what generationally they're bringing into your space. Lord have mercy. Sometimes you got to ask the Lord when to reject the hello that comes your way, because you don't know what's associated with that hello. You know what? That hello was kind of wild. You know, I block that in the name of Jesus, because that hello is trying to get into my space. Wow. What you doing? I'm giving you your hello back. That's just something your grandfather did. That hello might mess up my family line. Well, say hello to me. So here's the thing. The 10 tribes, the northern kingdom was eventually conquered by Assyria. And then now watch this. Assyria conquered the northern kingdoms. Babylon conquered the southern kingdoms. So listen, in the end, all 12 tribes were conquered. They were overtaken. So Isaiah's message comes during a time when Israel, listen when his message comes. His message comes at a time when they enjoyed a lot of prosperity. It's called the golden age of the kings. The golden age of the kings was David and Solomon. Yep. And they prospered in every form you can imagine. They prospered agriculturally. They prospered commercially. They prospered militarily. They were just, now watch this, because this is important. Now this is a good Bible study to have. Why? Yes, because sometimes a good Bible study. Listen, I was telling some clients the other day that when you have emotions, resist the temptation to judge every emotion as a negative. You understand? Because not every emotion is a negative. Because what happens is when you judge an emotion as a negative, then you suppress that emotion. Then when you suppress that emotion, it turns you into a tone police, which means that now you're judging anybody else who has the same emotion that you're suppressing. The other problem is that when you suppress an emotion, you push it down into the soil of your life. That soil is what feeds the fruit. Now you're giving fruit to people that's been contaminated by what you've been suppressing. You hear what I'm saying? Yeah. When a farmer uses pesticide on strawberries, it don't separate the good from the bad. So that strawberry goes to everybody. So we all eating strawberries that's got pesticides. All because he decided he wanted to kill weeds and bugs. You suppress them because you're trying to kill weeds and bugs, but you feeding that root. That's coming back into the fruit. So now you got me eating your bitterness. Wow. So I got to be in relationship with you, which means that I got to eat who you. So, and you know what happens because you don't want me to hang out with them because you mad at them. So now I got to eat your isolation. Oh, sir. So here's the thing. Be careful not to, listen, be careful not to attach your success and your blessings always to God's favor in your life. Because when you get blessed by God and you don't tie back to Him, it leads to what happened to the people in Israel, which is the reason why God sent them as a prophet, sent Isaiah as a prophet. He sent Isaiah as a prophet because they channeled their prosperity into immorality, idolatry, excessive drinking, oppression of the poor, greed, and then get this, and then the prophets who were legitimate became false prophets to pander to the people who no longer wanted to hear about God.
Wow.
You got to be careful. Every blessing you get, you find a way to tie it back to that God gave it to you. That's why sowing is so important. You know why sowing is so important? Because sowing allows you to tie it back to where you know. See, when people don't sow in the house, when God has blessed them, listen, where you sow is evidence of who you give in reference for who you got it from. So when you get blessed, if the first place you sow is the store, then you literally are blessing the store first.
Come on. Come on.
I'm not here talking about that. So, three things that Isaiah is sent to tell the people. I'm hurrying up. We'll get there in a moment. Let's get it done, right? There's three things that Isaiah the prophet was sent to stress. So when he sends this prophetic voice, he sends this prophetic voice to the people. He's trying to stress three things because what is happening among the people? Immorality, drunkenness, greed, oppression of people, right? The pandering of false prophets. And oh, by the way, who's he talking to? The Israelites. Who are the Israelites? The children of God. See, did y'all get that? Who's he talking to? The Israelites. Who are the Israelites? The children. And what are the children of God doing? Immoral, greedy, oppressing people, false prophets, pandering. Hello, somebody. You hear what I'm saying? The problem is he didn't send Isaiah to any other nation. He sent them to Israel. Why? Because Israel was his kids. You can't listen. So this is a life lesson for some of you. Stop trying to correct people with the Bible who are not a child of God. You can't be going outside the church. See, that's the problem with the church. You're going out there trying to get everybody to conform to the Bible and not having identified whether or not they're a child of God. Because the word applies to those who are his. So you have no right to judge anybody else's behavior, anybody else's lifestyle, anybody else's belief. You have no business using the Bible to judge them unless they are submitted, qualified, certified, and sanctified as a child of God. Isaiah was never sent to any other nation but Israel. I mean, because think about it. The northern kingdom was captured by the Assyrians. Why didn't Isaiah prophesy to them? The southern kingdom was captured by the Babylonians. We know how bad they were. Why wasn't Isaiah sent to them? We know as bad as some cities and counties and jurisdictions are, why aren't the prophets going to them? Why? Because God has assigned the prophets to talk to the people of God because the people of God start looking like the world.
Wow.
You don't find prophets working in postal systems. Prophets don't have top secret clearances. God's not giving you a badge so you can go prophesy and work unless everybody in your office is a believer. Nobody in your office is a believer, God ain't going to give you a word for them. You understand what I'm saying? Not a word of correction. Now, you might give some exhortation, encouragement, and comfort, but that is only if God has already been operating. Because Jesus said that I only draw those who are fathers and send them to me. That's why you got to be discerning who you try to preach to at work, because they may not be up next to be drawn by God. Which makes it which is really ridiculous to call this a Christian nation. It's not a Christian nation. You know why it's not a Christian nation? Because it's not made up of all Christians. It's to take America and put it alongside Israel and claim that America is the same as Israel when it's not. America is a melting pot of different faith, values, and beliefs. So your job is to be, listen, your job is to be a light to the world, to attract them. Not watch, listen to me. Your job is to be a light to attract them, not correct. You know why people not coming to church? Because you're not being a light. You're trying to be a roll officer. Correct somebody. Trying to be, watch this, I'm trying to be a correction. Trying to correct somebody. And you trying to correct somebody who don't even believe in God. That's a sin. They don't know what a freaking sin is. And by the way, you ain't even about sin. Yeah, exactly. It is real. Israel got all this going on. Oppression, greed, oppression, drinking, idolatry, excessive immorality, and the false prophets were fighting the people. So Isaiah said, listen, I'll say to tell you a couple things. Number one, we got to get saved. Literally, Isaiah was prophesied to them. So you can literally be in the family of God and not know the Lord. Amen, sir. Amen, somebody, right? You can literally be in the household. Listen, I don't believe that everybody in Egypt, in Goshen, behind the blood, was a believer. No one, I believe that everybody was a believer. Not everybody who says something here on Sunday is a believer. Somebody. Why we salvation? But some they say, and Christian is fashionable. Everybody's Christian. Everybody's wearing a cross. He says, the second thing is, he talks about the holiness of and then three, then he talks about the offense. That's what he judged them. And then he tells them about repentance and redemption. So now get this real quick, get this check. Isaiah 28, and Isaiah 28, he's speaking to the northern kingdom. And in verses 1 and 6 of Isaiah chapter 20, and Isaiah chapter 20, he's speaking to the northern kingdom. And then against Judah and the rest of the chapter. Isaiah 20, hermeneutically, how people have not survived after this survival. And so the first part of Isaiah chapter 20, he's speaking 1-6, he's speaking to the northern kingdom. The rest of the chapter, he's speaking to the southern kingdom. And I want you to see something in Isaiah chapter 20. So look at the first verse of chapter 20. You see that where it says, the crown of pride. Okay, so I want you to see that. I want you to see that crown of pride. Whoa. Whenever you see whoa, by the way, Jesus used. Y'all know, right? Whoa. This form of prophetic speech. Now watch this. Whoa. Always accompanied with an accusation or a threat. So when Jesus said, move to the now an accusation or threat is going to follow. So when he starts off in the first person, go to the crown of pride, you just know it's coming, right? It's accusation or judgment. And then he announces the judge to the crown of pride, to the trials of evil, glorious beauty, fading, which is at the head of the verdant valley. To those who overcome with God, the Lord is a mighty and strong one. Has a mighty strong, it's like the scale and the strength, like a flood of mighty voice. Watch this. Bring them down to the earth with his hand. He's talking about the fact that your sin is not greater than my hand. He's part of the judge. He's also remember I told you he's also talking to the Assyrians too. Y'all don't need to. You cannot go to escape. The Assyrians. You took my people to how people can't. Your hands are not without blood. Okay, so say it. He said. So he prophesied Ephraim will be trampled underfoot because of their blessing. Did y'all get that? Did y'all get that? That's the third thing that God judges idolatry, not just immorality, but he judges pride. God, according to the scriptures, it's an abomination, of foul smell in his nose. So God said there's six things that God hates. The Bible says there's six things that abomination is the one that leaves back as a proud look. Doesn't like pride. He hates pride. He's going to take a matter of pride. Because of pride, he's serious to do it. Verse 4 says, you can go from your fertile valley, and that you is going to verse 5 transitions directly into the river. Verse 5, in that day, the Lord will be more kind of glory and beauty to those who remain. God is faithful to those who don't cave, to those who don't. No matter how the world is making it don't you because God is faithful to put a crown on your head. Praise God. Come on, y'all. Bless the Lord. He's faithful. Then he starts speaking of the southern kingdom and Judah and Benjamin. Not only two tribes, Judah and Benjamin. Not only two tribes that would be left out of the